Welcome to the Fresh Vending podcast, where we discuss how smart vending machines are revolutionizing fresh food accessibility for both creators and consumers.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 7 of the Fresh Vending podcast. In this episode, we're going to compare smart fridge technologies. Again, I'm Isaac and my co-host Nathan is here. And we want to do a deep dive for particularly fresh food companies that are looking into smart fridges. And just to be clear here, unattended retail has many forms. A smart fridge is a secure transaction. You may have seen out there that there are micro markets where it's based on an honor system. You go and the bags of chips are laid out in the open for anyone's hands to grab. But in the smart fridge case, they use either weight or RFID technology that we'll talk about later in order to make these transactions secure, so that you're only paying for what you get, and then the operator is only is actually receiving revenue for what's taken. So just a quick disclosure, we are a smart fridge company, Food Spot, and we want to provide value here. And so we're going to give an unbiased kind of bird's eye view of this space. And but just wanted to put that out there. Nathan, any comments about that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And the reason that I think, sometimes when people look at there's two mentalities of, never share or talk about your competitors out, and potentially promote them, or there's all ships rising. And the way that we view this is that it's an all ships rising scenario. So there's 6 smart fridge platforms similar to us in the United States. And we believe that each of the technologies, each of the companies has enough unique positioning, and there's literally hundreds of thousands of locations in the US, buildings that would benefit from smart vending fridges. So for us, it's more like, let's put the information out there and empower fresh food companies to align with the company that makes the most sense for them. So it's not about, putting a company down or raising them up. It's more so put the information out there, because discovery can be really hard when you go online.
Yeah, I mean, there are half a dozen smart vending companies that we'll talk about today, but searching for a smart vending company, a smart fridge company, can be difficult because, one, there are different types, right? There's the platform where you can actually sell your own fresh food. There's some that hold the hardware proprietary, where you can't actually buy one of their fridges, Farmer's Fridge being one of them, that make their own food. And then on top of that, the space is just still a little new in the US. And so it takes some effort to understand how exactly this would work for your business. And so choosing one and understanding how they'll work with you to succeed is quite a task. And that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, for sure. So as Isaac mentioned, there's platforms. So a platform is a company like us that can sell you the hardware, the fridge, and then they're all going to have a dashboard that goes along with that, so that you can see remotely what's going on in my fridge, my real-time sales. And then usually they'll have something like, either maybe there's a tablet that's attached to the fridge, or they'll have a smartphone app for their employees and for customers to access it. But fundamentally, that's the concept of platform. And then, as Isaac mentioned, previous episodes, or if you go and Google things like smart fridge, in addition to the platforms, you're also going to see names pop up like Garten or Farmer's Fridge, we've talked about in a couple episodes. And again, those are companies that they're supplying the fresh food and they're stocking it. They're doing the logistics and the food manufacturing. So kind of a different scenario. So what we want to do today is break out some of the noise that you may find on Google, and just give you kind of a more objective look at what are these 6 smart fridge vending platforms that actually have locations in the US, where they're real companies and are not a concept that somebody made a beautiful picture of that doesn't actually exist, or there's companies around the world that market to the US, but they don't actually operate here. So those 6 companies that we're going to talk about today are, there's 3 that use weight sensor technologies, and there's 3 that use RFID technologies. These are the platforms we're going to talk about. Isaac, do you want to dive into the 3 companies that use weight sensor technology?
Yeah. The three companies are Hubs, Vicky, and Shelf X. And for those unfamiliar with how weight sensor works, you essentially enter in the item's weight into their system, and say it's on this top shelf in this region of the shelf, and then when a consumer comes and takes that item off the shelf, it knows to charge them for that very thing. So it's very specific, very streamlined. Um, and in terms of price points, you have Hubs, which is one unit, it costs $6,750 on the lower end, and then in kind of mid tier, we have Vicky, that's $9,300 per unit, and then we have Shelf X, which is $10,200. And for weight sensor technology, I think it's best for companies that have kind of uniform products that are always going to weigh the same. Um, we've kind of talked about this before, but if you have fresh food in your products, a lot of fresh food, the weight may vary. A Caesar salad from salad to salad may vary by a few ounces, and so that might be a little difficult. But for prepackaged goods or drinks, this could be a good option for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other technology that's most prominent is RFID. So RFID stands for radio frequency identification. And basically what's happening there is it's kind of similar to your Bluetooth, where you'll put a smart sticker on every single product in the fridge. And then the fridge, just like your cell phone, has the ability to recognize what's in close proximity. So when somebody swipes, unlocks the fridge, takes their product out, closes the door, the fridge is able to recognize that this particular item is no longer in the fridge, and therefore charges the consumer for that product. It's able to track on an individual product basis. And the three players in that space are Silkron, a company out of China. Their hardware, the fridge, is 3K. There's Byte, a company based out of California near us. Their hardware is 5,000. And then finally, there's our company, FoodSpot, which is our hardware costs 7,500. So as you can see, the products, when we start to look at, okay, great. So we have these two categories of technology. Now what it's really about is sharing some facts so that, the fresh food companies out there can start to figure out, spread and say, what technology makes most sense for my company? And then within that technology, which one of these three companies feels like it's the best fit. So I think we should walk through a little bit about how does that decision process work. And I think as Isaac and I had talked through it, we found that from weight sensor technologies in general, that's going to be a little bit more aligned with companies that do vending. And Isaac, you alluded before a little bit about this, and the reason that we say this is that it's a little bit more challenging with fresh food and weight sensor technologies. I know in my previous life, I looked at the way that a head of romaine lettuce could change, the weight of that could change about 50% throughout the calendar year, depending on growing seasons and all these different things that you can research on your own. So that can be a real challenge if the same salad starts to have huge fluctuations in weight throughout the year when you're using weight sensor technologies. But also at the same time, if you're getting a sliced bread sandwich that's bread, cheese, and meat, that's not really going to fluctuate too much throughout the year. So that's a cool way that a vending company can start to have fresh items in their fridge. And they can kind of push the envelope, and maybe there's a little bit more, you can charge a little bit more for those types of items. You can push the envelope. You can also find companies like, the 7-Eleven sandwich, sliced bread sandwiches. I mean, those can last 5 to 7 days. So you can do things that are a little bit more familiar with the operations of a vending company that, maybe they visit every 2 or 3 days is their normal cycle. And they're used to dealing with items that have a really long shelf life. Anything you want to add to that, Isaac?
Yeah, I think as an operator, weight sensing technologies are a lot more friendly. You don't have to deal with stickers. You just stock the item in there. I would say the consumer experience is a lot less robust, where you have to, if you're a consumer and you open a weight sensor smart fridge, you're going to have to put the item right back where it was on the same shelf to make sure it doesn't charge you. And uh, so I would say that those are some downsides of weight sensing.
Yeah, for sure. And for I think most of those weight sensing technologies, if the consumer doesn't put something back in the exact same spot, usually there's some sort of prompt to help you with that. But so it's a little bit weird on the consumer side. And then also, you don't necessarily you're not tracking on an individual basis. So in an RFID fridge with the stickers, you know exactly which product is going in when and where it is. But for example, if you stocked turkey sandwiches on Monday and then you came back and you stocked more turkey sandwiches on Wednesday, it can get a little complex from a food safety standpoint of knowing which sandwiches were which, in which case you're also going to have to put labels in there and really teach your delivery team how to rotate product, and then you're going to have to label each one of those to track expiration on the product itself. So just kind of some different pros and cons. Isaac, do you want to speak a little bit about kind of RFID technology and kind of the pros and cons on that side?
Yeah, for sure. So RFID technology, I mean, the first thing is you need stickers. You need to label your products with these smart stickers that will allow you to track inventory remotely and will allow you to stock the shelves more freely. Now, I think as an operator, this provides a lot of peace of mind, right? You know exactly what items in your fridge and how long they've been there. And as a consumer, some of these companies allow you to see actually some nutritional information and other information by looking up what's in the fridge on a smartphone app, right? So these are some, I would say these are some attributes and features of RFID. And stickers, I don't know, average cost of these stickers, Nathan?
It's 10 to 20 cents, depending
Yeah.
on, when you look at the three companies that are doing this, that's kind of the typical range. And I think in general, we made a broad kind of categorization saying that weight sensor technologies tend to be a little bit more conducive to vending company operations. And I think it's fair enough to say that RFID technologies tend to be a little bit more conducive to food service operations. Because food service operators are used to, making fresh food every single day and dealing with expirations and servicing on a daily basis and all these types of things. So food service operators can perhaps put things in there, like we had a customer recently that has a $13 bento box and $12 sushi rolls. But guess what? Those are only good for 24 hours. So it's amazing by vending standards when you can sell something for $12 or $13. But if you're not managing that really well, the waste can be, kind of crippling to your bottom line. So I think those are fair statements to be able to make. But again, it's broad strokes. But when we've seen that play out, those technologies kind of tend to sit with those different operators that way.
Yeah, I would also say on average, the fridges that use RFID technology, because there's no weight sensing technology in them, they tend to be a little more affordable, which is also favorable for food service.
Yeah, for sure. And again, so we'll do a quick walkthrough again. So we encourage people to do their own independent research. So from the weight technology standpoint, we had Hubs, HUBZ. And if you type in smart fridge with any of these names, it'll be easy to find. We had Vicky, VICKI. And we also had Shelf X, so the word shelf, and then followed by the letter X. And Hubs was started by a company that has a background in the bar industry, where they focus on the perfect pour and having the same amount every single time. Vicky is more recent, and they have applications where they're working with Best Buy and they're selling high-end electronics out of the fridge. So they kind of go very broad. And food is one optional category where people will use their technology. I mean, they sell cosmetics, all sorts of things out of those retail units. And then the last one in that category, Shelf X, That's a company that I think they have a couple hundred locations, and they've been focused on food since day one.
Mm.
And then switching gears, Byte. So Byte Technologies, looking at the RFID side, they pioneered smart vending RFID technology in the U.S. market around 2016. They acquired a company called Pantry out of San Francisco, and they were really like the engineers that were kind of, geeking out on the technology and developing it. But, kudos to Byte. Like pioneering a country is really hard. They had to vertically integrate where they were doing everything, just like Farmer's Fridge, from the hardware to the software to the logistics to the food manufacturing. And they actually proved out the concept similar to what Farmer's Fridge did in Chicago, where they got up to, I believe they had about 500 locations in the Bay Area. And it was mostly like tech office type environments where it was an amenity for the employees. So they really proved out the smart vending business model at scale, which is great for the industry. And then ultimately in early 2020, they sold off the food manufacturing and logistics to a company called Garten, Garten. And now companies can, use Garten service in Byte's fridges. So that was kind of their position in the marketplace. And then moving along, Silkron is the second RFID company, and they're the as cheap as you can possibly get, buy direct from China option coming in at 3K, and it's a pretty bare bones transaction. The analogy I always use is it's kind of like buying a toaster. Like there's your toaster, you take it from there, which can be a bit of a challenge. But we can talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, there's our company, FoodSpot. So FoodSpot in the United States, our partners are actually CryoWorks. So the owner, partner of FoodSpot, Darwin, he started CryoWorks back in 2015 in Singapore. And then they were the global pioneers. So they grew out into 5 different countries. And then we launched about a year and a half ago in the United States under the name FoodSpot, but same company, same ownership as CryoWorks, just kind of a different brand. The word FoodSpot feels a little bit more intuitive for the American market. So that's a little bit of a recap. Anything I missed in there, Isaac, that you want to add to the mix?
No, I think that's good. I feel like it's probably a good time to talk about the different attributes that you want to look at when looking into smart fridge companies: interior space, launch support, the design, the data security, because that's a big important one to get past the IT barriers there. So why don't we dive into those?
Yeah, that's great. So as we mentioned before, weight is a little bit more geared towards vending operators and owners. RFID is a little bit more aligned with the sensibilities of food service, but there's still some things that no matter which one of those buckets that you're in, that it makes sense to take a hard look at and size it up for yourself as you reach out to these companies. One thing I will say is that the discovery process is also challenging because so many people, and I knew this from my time at Chowbotics, and I know this from people that I know that work in our competitors' companies, as well as our time at FoodSpot, is you have a ton of people outreaching that are just curious. They're not in a position where they seriously want to buy. So it's not uncommon that you can reach out to a smart vending company on their website, via email, over the phone many times, and they just don't get back to you. So that also makes the discovery process a little bit challenging. So we're going to share some broad strokes things that if you are fortunate enough to be able to get into contact with them and have a meaningful conversation, that you really want to focus on and kick the tires. So Isaac, I think you started that off with interior space. So one thing that's really interesting about interior space is thinking about, the cost difference of the hardware of, if I'm going to have somebody drive a vehicle or walk over there and you're going to be paying for labor and potentially gas in a vehicle, you really want to optimize the amount of product that you're fitting in there so that you don't have to go as frequently. And then secondarily, you want to be able to fit more variety in the fridge as well. So when you look at the footprint inside the fridge, not always, but most of the time, you really want to maximize that interior space and the amount and variety of products that you can fit inside. Um, I know with the weight sensor companies, for example, ShelfX, the first time I used them, they said, the shelf is, this wide and this deep. But when you use the product, you actually realize that the weight sensors inside are not that large, and there's rows of weight sensors. So you have to kind of dig a little bit deeper and say, okay, so what is the usable space? Not just the size of the shelf, and do some dimensions and some comparison. Some environments, a smaller shelf might be good if you're servicing a small office and maybe it's subsidized. Something that, like, our fridge is a full commercial size fridge, as is most of our competitors. But you also want to dig a little bit deeper and say, how big is the shelf? And then how many shelves are there? And do some math, because, a fridge, if it's 30 or 40% bigger than a competitor, that's going to really impact your bottom line. What was the other topic that you had brought up, Isaac?
Yeah, launch support is a big one, which you've already touched on a little bit, but kind of what you're talking about, where when you're getting into smart vending, you really don't want that toaster experience from China where someone just sells you the hardware and you have to go it alone. I mean, there are a lot of factors that go into this, right? You need to understand what the costs are, how to choose the best location if you're a fresh food company, understanding how to stock your fridge. I mean, we talked about this the other day. One of our clients is a huge food service firm, and not until it wasn't until we went down and kind of showed them the ropes of stocking a smart vending unit did we start to see the numbers for their fridge start to climb. And so, even though there are a lot of food operators that have been around for a long time, that have been in the industry for a long time, stocking a smart vending unit is a little bit of a different game. And so you're going to want to make sure that this company truly has your success at heart and wants to help you out there with their launch success.
Yeah, that's a great point. That company that you're talking about, and this plays into kind of just broad, again, kind of exchanging value of what we've experienced. The mentality of the vending company is going to be, you're used to having things that have, like, Coca-Cola and Snickers, they have a year-long shelf life, right? So the value is like, or the intuition there is zero waste or very little waste. And that can really do you a disservice if you come in from strictly looking at the vending side, because you're going to miss out on the potential of smart vending to have those high dollar items that we mentioned earlier. And if you come in strictly from the food service side, you can have a ton of waste. You really want to find out, like, what is that mix based on the clients that are in that building, regardless of the technology that you're using, and really get that dialed in. So that client that you mentioned, they're a very large food service operations company, and they were afraid of making waste, but at the same time, they had their fridge, they were putting very little product in there that was more fresh than what they needed. So what we did is we went on site and we worked with them. We said, hey, listen, if you're going to put items in there, let's put in very few, very high value items. So we put in a whole bunch of, like, sushi rolls and things like that expired within 24 hours, but we would only put maybe 2 of each of those things in there. And then also we worked with them to say, you need to have some items in there that are relevant during breakfast time, some items that are more substantial snacks. We had some grain salads that we put in there that are substantial, that have a longer shelf life. Brought in all sorts of different products into the mix. And ultimately it ended up being about, 40% fresh food, 15%, food that needed to sell within 24 hours. And based on the data, in a matter of 2 weeks, we were able to triple their sales, where they were doing upwards of, on their better days, they would hit, $800 in sales in a single day. So a dramatic change for them, but something that, it's not vending and it's not food service, it's unattended fresh food retail. You want to have it be very bright, very welcoming, there's not a person there to represent your brand. You want to have the fridge really well stocked, as full as it can be, except for a few of those, highly perishable marquee items that are really unique that you would never expect to have in a vending machine. But when you have those experiences and you're like, oh, they didn't sell out of this one item, it's a really amazing experience. It's a game changer for, what we would consider vending.
And you learn over time, right? Say they find that they can only sell an average of two sushi trays on Tuesdays usually, then they know they have a stocking schedule, right?
And we told them that if you don't have waste, like a healthy amount of waste in your first month, then you're missing sales. Like, waste is your friend in the first month within reason, because that's how you learn the difference between sushi on a Tuesday and sushi on a Friday, right? And how those sales go. Because until you get that waste, you're never going to know the full potential of fresh food vending. So again, it's a combination of the sensibilities of vending and the food service sensibilities, and then also bringing in a whole new orientation to, it's really important how you present yourself, because there's nobody there to sell your brand, and you need to win over the consumer confidence with the way that you merchandise the interior of your fridge.
Yeah, launch support is hugely important. I've seen you and our director of launch success, Erica, help out our clients, and it's truly night and day seeing what value that you guys brought to them as you train them on how to stock the fridge and operate.
In that particular situation, we talked about, and this isn't about just selling us, it's different mentalities. So if you know that you're a vending company and you know exactly what your offering is, and you're already doing it in the building, or you're adding on, maybe you don't need any of these learnings because you're using products that you've already been selling and you don't want to push the envelope. Well, in that case, you don't need a company necessarily that's going to offer a substantial, kind of onboarding process. When we talk about that, I know that Vicky, they build into their purchase price, they build in, substantial, I think it's several hours of being able to sit down on a day and go through and help, onboard and load all the weights into your machine for their weight sensors and those types of things. I know that Byte, they do an hour-long kind of onboarding with the salesperson to kind of get you up to speed on using, and they have some resources, video tutorials. I know for us, we have a weekly Zoom call every single week for an entire month before, and then we also have follow-up calls on Zoom a week after, a month after, to really hold people's hands and make sure that to walk them through that learning curve so that you can have these phenomenal sales figures. But that's not everybody needs that. So taking a hard look at what are the resources to be able to launch this. I can tell you that fridge for $3K that comes out of China from Silkron, you're not going to get any of that. Maybe you don't need that. And the same is true for support. Like when your fridge breaks down, you can call somebody, but who is it going to be? Is it going to be somebody that has deep, intimate knowledge of the fridge? You can't call your regular refrigeration repair guy. They're not going to be able to help you when it comes to smart vending. So really kicking the tires and thinking about, when my retail store shuts down or breaks down, am I going to be back in business in 24 hours and be selling again? Or am I going to have to wait weeks and weeks for some product to come to China and I'm going to have to diagnose it myself? Really want to think through those things, because that's your retail store. You'll effectively be out of business, and you'll also ruin your sales and your consumer confidence. Yeah. So another item that we look at is taking a look at the design of the fridge. So it really depends what you're trying to communicate. You think of traditional vending and it's a box and maybe there's some spirals and it falls and you're like, again, there's my bag of peanuts, right? And you don't really need to have too much confidence to buy a bag of peanuts. You buy it and you keep it moving. When it comes to smart vending, you really want to think about, what are you trying to communicate with your brand? what is it that you want to instill in somebody when they come to your micro store? Think about you go into a restaurant and the bathroom's disgusting, the menu's dirty. Um, maybe you're sitting on some cheap seats. There's sometimes when that doesn't bother you. If I'm going to a all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet for $12, I'm not going to be as kind of critical of those types of things than I might be in other environments. But when you're going to a fresh food vending machine, it's all about what level of consumer confidence are you trying to instill, because you don't have an employee there. Think about if you're selling, that $13 bento box or that $12 Caesar salad with chicken. What is that machine saying to your customers about your brand? That whole experience. So it's really important that you think about that before, if you're going more of the economical vending route versus if you're going to have a premium experience. And that's something that, take a look at the machines side by side for the category of technology that you think is most relevant, and think about what those machines say about your brand and your brand experience, and what kind of consumer confidence does it instill. And think about, yourself, if you were walking up to those fridges, how do they make you feel? I think that's a little bit with on kind of on the design side. Yeah, and I think that's great because, again, it's not about, try it on for size. Think about, what fits your company best. The beauty of that is that those units, as much as they are smart vending refrigerators, very different aesthetics in there, right? I mean, I feel like the Vicky unit felt a little bit more futuristic. I think our unit is, we try to shoot for simple and premium. The Silkron unit is, you look at the price, it kind of feels like it correlates with the experience. And the other piece of this, when you look at hardware to think about, is the price range here is, I think the cheapest one is Silkron 3K, and then the most expensive you're getting up around 10K. $7,000 is a lot of money. But when you think about, if the interior of the fridge is twice as big and you own this fridge, it's a commercial refrigerator. Like, you could have this 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Start to do some math on how much that's going to cost you in difference per day versus what your brand is projecting and your sales opportunity, and kind of the sense of consumer confidence that you want to instill. When it gets down to it, you're talking about far less. You're talking about pennies every day. So just thinking about that with respect to the lifespan of the fridge that feels like it fits you best. Let's see, what else, Isaac, we want to talk about?
Another attribute you should probably look for is data security. I mean, I know one very popular question we get asked is, how is the data kept secure in the fridge? And you have some companies that merely just connect to the Wi-Fi in the building. Other companies have their own cellular data, so that's something to think about. Do you kind of understand which ones are having their own data plan, Nathan? Do you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting part. We only talked about the price of the hardware so far, and that's because there's not a great apples to apples comparison after you get past the hardware. For us, we like to bundle everything into like one monthly fee. But if you don't have, you can't necessarily get on the local Wi-Fi everywhere, and it's also not necessarily secure either. So, most people aren't used to fresh food people. You bring up words like cyber liability. But ultimately, if somebody hacks into these, credit cards, and it happens to the biggest companies like Target, for example, you're in that liability chain potentially. And that's a scary place to be. So one of the things that, there's a few companies that we mentioned here, they don't even sell you a fridge with a credit card reader on it. You have to go and kind of figure that piece out on your own. And that's a different kind of challenge. I know that Silkron doesn't come standard with a credit card reader. ShelfX doesn't come standard with a credit card reader. So again, something that you want to think about. And when you do look at the company that's being used, you want to see the highest level of data security that you can get. And ideally, the responsibility for that is completely on the partner that does the credit card processing, and you have zero liability in that chain. So that's something that you want to think about. I mean, coming standard with a credit card reader seems like something that you would really want to have day one. You just start selling, and it's, you're not kind of dabbling in a world that you're not familiar with. And then also making sure that you have the highest level of data security that you can get. That should really be kind of the norm going in. One other piece that comes to mind there is that I think is really important to touch on is the rates with that. So the rates with the credit card transactions and these smart vending technologies, there's different ways that people kind of move the rates around and camouflage them and do all these different things. It could be like, oh, it's 20 cents a transaction, or it's 2%, or it's a percentage of sales, or whatever it is. The rates vary from about 4.5% to 7% with these companies. So we encourage you, dig in, look at them side by side. They're all within, that few percentage points. So not a huge difference, but it's something you want to look at. It's something you want to think about. Another thing that we talked about is, with those RFID stickers. If you're in food service and you think that RFID technology is more appropriate for, the considerations of food service and food safety and tracking, then you want to take a look at this, these RFID stickers. So it's us, it's Byte, and it's Silkron. With our platform, you don't have to have a sticker for every single SKU. With our competitors, you have to have a roll of stickers for every SKU. So when you start to do the math of having a roll of stickers in your kitchen for every single SKU that you've ever sold, you can spend a couple $1,000s just on buying stickers. And then if you're stuck into a proprietary relationship of having to buy those stickers and have your smart vending company program all those stickers for you, that can get really complex. With our system, you only need to have 2 rolls of stickers, and you can change SKUs in a matter of a couple minutes. You can create a new SKU and launch it live on your system. So it's also, good to be aware of those types of things with the ongoing costs of the credit card transactions, of the stickers, if you choose to use RFID, and go in, with your eyes wide open. Isaac, I think we only have 1 or 2 more topics to talk about that are considerations. Which one do you want to cover?
Yeah, I think mobile app is a big part of it. Some of these companies, they come with just the fridge and rely on straight up foot traffic and people's intuitions to drive sales. Other companies provide a branded mobile app where if it's perhaps more of a returning customer base, say a university, the company can create a branded app where the student can go on and see, oh, I really liked this quinoa bowl that I had the other day at this fridge. I wonder if the other fridges around campus have it, and how fresh it is, and so they can go on a mobile app there. So looking into the so-called bells and whistles in that regard, what extra offerings do these companies have?
Yeah, that's great. Some companies lean into having a tablet like Vicky and Byte. Other companies are more mobile first, and then there's other companies that have kind of nothing. But when you look at the mobile side, as you said, Isaac, I would say dig on that a little bit and just say, is there what is the real value that the mobile application is offering to the operator to make their life easier? And what is the real tangible benefit there, as well as the consumer? And one of the things that I've seen happen time and time again is that operators fall in love with the concept of technology. If you're listening to this podcast right now, you're probably a forward-thinking fresh food company. You're an early adopter. You probably like what technology does for your business, and you kind of have to recognize that in yourself. I know I did, because I've owned cafe chains. I've been a owner operator, and I've also worked in food tech for the last 10, 15 years. So I lean into these things. I love these things. But when we start to look at Vicky, for example, there's a retina scan. You can do a fingerprint scan. looking at, Byte has a tablet on the front. In Asia, CryoWorks, our company, we have an LCD screen. Our entire glass door is an LCD screen in one of our models. It's 4 feet by 2 feet. That's the most popular selling model that we have in all of Asia. But one thing we realized is as we moved into Australia and as we moved into launching units in Western Europe, is that in those environments, the LCD screen was a lot less popular and the clear glass was way more popular. And what we came to realize is that it was much more simple and much more intuitive when consumers that were newer to these technologies, because again, this has been around in Asia smart vending's been in Asia for a long time, is that the more simple and the more intuitive that you make it, the more successful it is. And what I mean by that is you walk up, you swipe your card to unlock, door opens, and boom, you have access to be able to pick up that item and interact, because that's a natural behavior for consumers in the US market. When you start to get into scenarios, and I can only speak for myself here, but if I was at an airport or I was in a condo or something and there's a smart vending fridge and it says, let's start an account. Give me your email, give me your name. Let's scan your retina. Let's get your fingerprint. Part of me is going to say, wow, that's really cool and interesting because I geek out on technology. The other part of me is going to say, I'm just trying to buy a salad. Like, what is all of this extra about? And what we realized in Asia, as we started to do different things like add gamification to the LCD screen, kids would come and play with it and they weren't even buying anything. They just thought it was fun and cool, and they would play the games that were on the screen. As we got into the more senior generation, we were scaring away people that were more senior because they were like, oh, this is just too overwhelming with the technology. So over time, what you realize is be thoughtful of when you lean into technology, because the bottom line is not to be cool. The bottom line is to sell product, and you can be either, kind of clogging the user experience because people are playing around with your tablet or playing around with your smartphone app or whatever it may be, or you're alienating a certain segment. So that's why in the US market, we took those learnings that we had, and we opted to have the most simple interface possible of swipe, open, grab what you want, close, walk away. And that's something that was a learning for us on the fresh food side for sure.
All right, thank you, Nathan. That was great. I think we covered a pretty good ground on comparing smart fridge technologies here in the US. And for people that want to learn more, they can always reach out to us. Again, make sure to look into the price, obviously, what you want to represent you as a brand, looking into the launch success, the different technologies associated with that. And whether it's a turnkey solution or not, whether it's a platform or not, these are all great questions to start thinking about as you get into smart fridge vending. So anything else from you, Nathan?
No, hopefully you got some value and it gave you a little bit of orientation of the world of smart vending, like Isaac just mentioned. We absolutely encourage people, go out, jump on Google, do your research, talk to companies. Hopefully they answer your calls and get back to you. But your independent research and looking on Google will definitely help kind of bring some of these things to life so that you can do your due diligence, make your own decisions. And by all means, if you've received value from this podcast, please keep listening, because we'll do deeper dives on different topics like this. Again, with the intent of providing value so that you can start to size up. Obviously, we love our product, but we may not be the best fit for you. So continue to educate yourself, take these learnings and move forward and find the best fit for your fresh food or vending company.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Brilliant.
Thank you for listening to the show this week. If you're interested in learning more about smart vending platforms, you can visit us at launchfoodspot.com. I'm Nathan Downs, and you've been listening to the Fresh Vending Podcast.